Cleopatra was born to be a queen. That much is clear. Born in 69 BC to a dynasty of Greek rulers who had long forgotten how to speak Egyptian, Cleopatra was the first member of her family to learn the language of the land they ruled. And while her family was obsessed with proving their Greek heritage, Cleopatra was fascinated with Egypt, ancient traditions, pharaohs of old, and most importantly, becoming the ultimate ruler of Egypt. When she took the throne at age 18, after the death of her father, King Ptolemy XII, she was determined to write her own story. No puppet master in Rome would tell her what to do this time. She was going to make her own decisions. Yet despite her intelligence, knowledge, and ambition, Cleopatra would spend the majority of her life as an exile, fighting to regain her throne and struggling to keep her kingdom independent from the ever-expanding Roman Empire. Because Cleopatra's plans to make history would quickly be derailed by a man she trusted the most, her own brother. You can learn all about that in episode 3 of our series. After winning back the throne and killing her treacherous brother, Cleopatra needed to remind the people of Egypt that she was the one true pharaoh. So she commissioned a series of coins minted in her likeness. The coins would go on to become some of the most beautiful and valuable coins ever produced. They were minted between 51 and 30 BC. During the reign of Cleopatra VII and her lover, Roman general Mark Antony, and they show Cleopatra with the traditional Egyptian symbols of royalty. The headdress called a nenes, and the cobra symbol that represents the goddess of protection, Wajet. These coins were likely meant to demonstrate Cleopatra's divine right to rule, especially since she was shown holding an ankh, the symbol of eternal life, and surrounded by the names of various Egyptian gods and goddesses. But there's a secret hidden on these seemingly religious coins. Can you see it? Neither Cleopatra nor Mark Antony were Egyptian. Both were members of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a series of Greek kings descended from Alexander the Great that ruled over Egypt after Alexander conquered it in 332 BC. The Ptolemies were never accepted by the native Egyptians because they didn't speak Egyptian or understand Egyptian culture. They were outsiders ruling over a country that wasn't theirs. Cleopatra knew that if she wanted to rule Egypt, she couldn't ignore the religion and customs of her subjects. While her ancestors embraced their Greek identity, she immersed herself in Egyptian culture, learning its languages, customs, and beliefs. She also built temples, funded festivals, and offered gifts to the gods, showing everyone that she truly believed she was a pharaoh sent by the gods to rule over Egypt. However, the Egyptians weren't the only ones that Cleopatra tried to win over. When her brothers seized the throne following their father's death, Cleopatra was forced to flee to Syria, where she befriended the armies of Rome. The Roman Republic had recently annexed the eastern Mediterranean, and its forces were stationed throughout the region. There, Cleopatra met the most powerful man in the known world, Roman dictator Julius Caesar, and she made sure that he knew that she was the true pharaoh of Egypt. Legend has it that she surprised Caesar by sneaking into his palace in Alexandria disguised inside a carpet. This was no ordinary rug, it was Cleopatra's entrance onto the world stage. And when Caesar unwrapped it, he found the most beautiful woman in the world, willing to do whatever it took to get back her throne. The two would take back Alexandria together. Cleopatra and Caesar partnered up to defeat her brother and restore her to the throne. And in return, Cleopatra would give Caesar everything he wanted, including a son, Caesarion. But even though she gave Caesar everything he asked for, he would never accept Cleopatra or their son as equals. Despite the fact that Caesar was named in Shakespeare's play, Antony and Cleopatra, as being present at the fall of Troy, very little is actually known about him. Most of what we think we know comes from ancient historians like Plutarch, who based his writings on no-loss biographies written by a woman named Nicias of Byzantium. Because of that, most of what we know about Caesar is filtered through the lens of those telling his story, stories that often downplay the role of women in Caesar's life. But modern scholars believe that Cleopatra was instrumental in restoring order to Egypt and expanding trade networks throughout the empire. She helped end a years-long civil war and issued a new currency that stabilized the economy. Thanks to her intelligence, fluency in many languages, and business acumen, Egypt flourished under her rule. Fortunately, Cleopatra's power did not go undisputed. Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, and her former allies sought to destroy her as well. She escaped to Rome and lived in exile until her brother died and she was able to reclaim the throne of Egypt. But this time, Cleopatra would have none of the foolishness that got her thrown out of Alexandria the first time around. She would rule alongside her younger sister Arsinoe IV, ensuring that no one could seize the throne unless they took them both out. But their partnership wouldn't last long. Once again, Cleopatra was forced to flee, escaping to Syria once more. This time, she would team up with yet another Roman, this time Mark Antony, who was fighting to secure his place among the most powerful men in Rome. It was here that Cleopatra welcomed Antony into her court, hosting him on a golden ship as he entered Alexandria. She was dressed as the goddess Isis, wife of Osiris and mother of Horus, the most important deity in Egyptian mythology. Antony, who was a fan of Egyptian culture, would later refer to Cleopatra as the new Isis. In exchange for Cleopatra's help in defeating his enemies, Antony gave her half of his kingdom. The two would rule side by side and produce 3 children. They also ruled their kingdoms separately, with Cleopatra running Egypt and Antony controlling territories in the east. But their relationship was scandalous to say the least. Not only was Antony married to Octavia, Caesar's sister, and the daughter of an emperor, but Cleopatra was already in a relationship with Caesar and bearing his child. Both affairs were considered inappropriate, and Antony's wife was furious with him for abandoning her and choosing Cleopatra instead. She begged her brother Octavian to take action against Antony. Octavian was happy to oblige. The war between Octavian and Antony was inevitable. Antony thought he could rely on Egypt for supplies and reinforcements, but Cleopatra refused to send him any soldiers, though she had promised to support him with 60 warships. She only sent 20, and so Antony was forced to battle Octavian with a much smaller fleet than he had expected. The Battle of Actium took place in 32 BC off the coast of Greece. Antony and Cleopatra's fleet was outnumbered, but still formidable. Yet the battle was lost before it even began, when Cleopatra fled the scene, leaving Antony to fend for himself. He believed that she had died, and so he drew his sword and fell on it. When Cleopatra learned that Antony was dead, she realized there was no point in continuing to fight. The war was over and Egypt was next, so she planned her own demise, writing letters to her servants explaining how she wanted to die. According to the version of events written by Roman historian Plutarch, Cleopatra requested that her servants bring her a basket filled with venomous snakes. When Octavian's soldiers arrived in Alexandria, she held the basket to her chest and allowed one of the serpents to bite her. She died peacefully in Antony's arms, and her spirit was free. Historians now believe that Cleopatra didn't die peacefully in her own bed, but rather was executed by Octavian's forces. Recent research suggests that the poison that killed her was actually injected by an executioner, ending her life violently, not peacefully. Regardless of how she died, Cleopatra didn't just go quietly, she went down in flames. Her memory has burned throughout history. I hope you enjoyed this fiery tale of the Queen of the Nile. Let me know your thoughts on Cleopatra and what you think might have happened to her. And don't forget to check out episode 5 of our series, which will be premiering in September. And thank you to all of our supporters for making these videos possible.